A washed-up rapper faces a ruthless host mockery on live TV, then unleashes a rap that flips the stage. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications to catch our latest videos. Don't miss this epic showdown. The studio lights burned hotter than Marcus Johnson, known to the world as MC Blaze, remembered from his glory days, and the roar of the live audience felt like a distant echo of the crowds that once chanted his name in sold-out arenas. At 52, Marcus sat on the plush leather chair of the Spotlight, America's glitziest talk show, his broad frame draped in the old-school hip-hop garb that defined his era, baggy jeans sagging just right, an oversized denim jacket with rhinestone studs catching the stage lights, a gold chain thick enough to anchor a ship, and a backward Kangol cap tilted defiantly. His face, weathered but proud, carried the weight of a man who'd seen the top of the charts and the bottom of the barrel. The scent of studio makeup and hairspray clung to the air, a far cry from the smoky clubs where he'd spit rhymes that shook the 90s. Tonight, he wasn't here to perform. He was a guest, invited to share his story, or so he thought. The invitation had promised a chance to reflect on his career, maybe plug his struggling new album. But as the cameras rolled and the audience settled, Marcus sensed a trap. The host, Vanessa Steele, strutted onto the stage. Her white blazer cut so low it seemed to defy gravity, her blonde hair cascading in perfect waves, her smile sharp as a blade. At 35, Vanessa was the queen of the Spotlight, a ratings juggernaut who thrived on controversy, her blue eyes glinting with the glee of a predator spotting prey. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the one, the only, MC Blaze, she announced, her voice dripping with mock reverence. And the crowd clapped, some cheering, others snickering, as if they'd been primed for a spectacle. Marcus forced a smile, nodding to the audience, but his gut churned. He'd been in enough rooms to know when the vibe was off. Vanessa settled into her chair, legs crossed, her manicured nails tapping the armrests like a countdown to chaos. "So, Marcus," she began, her tone syrupy yet venomous. "It's been a minute since you were, relevant. What's it like going from platinum records to, well, whatever you're doing now?" The audience laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that hit Marcus like a slap. He shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening, but he kept his cool, his deep voice steady as he replied, "Life's a cycle, Vanessa. You rise, you fall, you get back up. I'm still here, still making music." Vanessa's laugh was high and theatrical, her head tilting back as if he'd told a joke. "Oh, honey, still here is generous. I mean, your last album, what was it called? Blaze of Glory? Sold, what, 12 copies? My Barista SoundCloud has more streams." The crowd roared and Marcus felt the heat creeping up his neck, his fingers gripping the chair's arms. He'd expected tough questions, but this was a takedown, a public flogging disguised as entertainment. Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "Let's be real. Marcus, you were huge in the 90s, but hip-hop's moved on. Baggy jeans, gold chains, that's a costume now, not a career. Don't you think it's time to, retire? Maybe open a barbershop?" The audience howled, some clapping, others whispering, and Marcus caught a few sympathetic glances, but they were drowned out by the glee of the mob. His mind raced, memories of his prime flashing like a montage, headlining Madison Square Garden, signing a $10 million deal, his face on MTV. Now he was a punchline, his legacy reduced to a prop for Vanessa's ego. He wanted to walk off, to tell her where she could shove at her blazer, but he needed this exposure, needed the world to see he wasn't done. "I'm not about quitting, he said, his voice low, measured, but carrying an edge that made a few audience members lean forward. "Hip-hop's in my blood. Trends change, but real stays real." Vanessa pounced, sensing blood. "Real, oh, Marcus, bless your heart. Real doesn't pay the bills when your fan base is collecting Social Security." The crowd erupted again, and Marcus's chest tightened, the weight of her words heavier than the gold around his neck. She wasn't just mocking him, she was dismantling him, piece by piece, for clicks and ratings. He glanced at the audience, saw a mix of faces, some gleeful, some uncomfortable, a few older black men nodding faintly, as if they felt the sting of her words too. Vanessa didn't stop. She pulled up a screen behind them, flashing a grainy tabloid photo from 2005. Marcus, younger, wild-eyed, leaving a club after a brawl. "This is real, right? MC, Blaze, the bad boy of rap, always in trouble. Tell us, Marcus, how's that real working out now that you're couch surfing at your cousin's place?" The laughter was deafening, and Marcus felt the room tilt. The lights too bright, the air too thin. He'd clawed his way out of poverty in Brooklyn, fought for every scrap of success, only to be here, a caricature on a stage. Yet something in him stirred, a spark of the old Blaze, the kid who'd battled MCs and ciphers and won. He leaned forward, locking eyes with Vanessa. "You want to talk real, Vanessa? Let's talk about you, sitting there, acting like you know me, like you know my struggle. You don't—" The crowd hushed for a moment, caught off guard, and Vanessa's smile faltered, just a flicker, before she recovered. "Oh, we're getting spicy. Okay, Blaze, enlighten us. What's the struggle of a has-been like?" She leaned back, arms crossed, confident she'd regain control. But Marcus felt the spark grow, a fire he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. The audience watched, some leaning in, sensing the shift, and Marcus knew this was his moment to start fighting back, even if he didn't know how far it would take him. The studio air felt thicker now, charged with the electric hum of a crowd feeding off Vanessa Steele's venom, their laughter a jagged blade twisting in Marcus Johnson's chest. MC. Blaze sat rigid in his chair, the gleam of his gold chain catching the relentless stage lights. His oversized denim jacket, a silent testament to an era Vanessa was hell-bent on burying. Her voice, sharp and syrupy, sliced through the noise as she leaned forward, her low-cut white blazer drawing eyes she knew how to command. "Oh, Marcus, you're a fighter. I'll give you that," she said, her smile a mask of false pity. "But let's talk about this struggle you mentioned. I mean, hip-hop's a young man's game, right? You're pushing, what, 60? Time to hang up the mic, don't you think?" The audience roared, some clapping like they'd bet on her to draw blood. But Marcus caught the uneasy shifts of others, older faces in the crowd, a few black men and women whose tight lips mirrored his own disgust. He was 52, not 60, and her jab wasn't just about age. It was a dog whistle, a way to paint him as obsolete, a relic of a culture she'd never understand. His pulse quickened, but he kept his face stone calm, his deep voice steady as he shot back. "Age don't stop talent, Vanessa. You'd know that if you ever listened to my music instead of reading tabloids." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd, a few claps breaking the tide of laughter, and Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her grin tightening. She wasn't used to pushback, not on her stage, where guests were props for her spotlight. "Oh, sweetie, I've heard your music," she said, waving a hand dismissively, her nails flashing like tiny daggers. "It's nostalgic, I'll say that. But let's show the folks what Blaze has been up to since the 90s. The massive screen behind them flickered to life, and Marcus's stomach dropped as a grainy video played. A 2003 awards show. Him stumbling off stage after a shouting match with a rival rapper, his eyes wild, his chain swinging. The crowd gasped, then laughed, egged on by Vanessa's theatrical wince. "Yikes, Marcus, this is your legacy? Fistfights and flops? No wonder you're couch surfing now." She turned to the audience, milking their cheers, but Marcus saw the lie in her act, the way she leaned into stereotypes, angry black man, washed-up thug, to keep them hooked. His fingers dug into the chair's leather, memories of that night flooding back, the rivals' taunts, the industry's betrayal, the headlines that painted him as the villain. He'd been 30 then, at the peak of his fame. But one misstep and the world turned. Now, Vanessa was digging up that grave, and the audience was eating it up. "That's one night, Vanessa," he said, his voice low but cutting. "Out of a 30-year career. You want to talk legacy? Let's talk about the kids I mentored, the communities I lifted up." The crowd quieted slightly, a few heads nodding, but Vanessa pounced, her voice rising. "Communities? Oh, please, Marcus. You mean the ones you left behind when you blew your millions on cars and clubs? Let's not kid ourselves. You're no role model." The words landed like a punch, and the audience's laughter swelled, but Marcus felt a shift, a clarity cutting through the haze of humiliation. She wasn't just mocking him, she was mocking his people, his culture, the struggles she'd never know. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "You don't get to tell me who I am. Vanessa, you sit there acting like you own this stage, but you're just reading a script. I built my name from nothing. Can you say the same?" The crowd hushed, a tense silence falling, and Vanessa's smile froze, her fingers twitching on her note cards. For a split second, she was off balance. But she recovered, bossed, her laugh high and forced. "Wow, touchy. Okay, let's pivot. Tell us about this new album." "Marcus, what's it called? Desperate Comeback?" The crowd laughed again, but it was thinner now, some faces turning skeptical, sensing the cruelty in her tone. Marcus didn't flinch. "It's called Resurrection," he said, his voice steady, resonant. "And it's about coming back stronger, something you might not understand." A few audience members clapped, a black woman in the front row nodding fiercely, and Vanessa's eyes darted to the control booth, as if signaling for backup. She flipped through her note cards, her composure slipping, and pulled up another clip. A low-budget music video from his last album. The visuals dated, the sound raw. "This is Resurrection? Looks more like retirement to me," she quipped, and the crowd laughed. But Marcus saw the crack in her armor, the way her jabs were losing steam. He leaned back, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Keep playing those clips, Vanessa. Everyone's a story of me getting back up. How many times you been knocked down?" The question hung in the air, and the audience stirred. Some whispering, others leaning forward, sensing a shift in the power dynamic. Vanessa's laugh was brittle now, her eyes flashing with something close to panic. "Knocked down? Oh, Marcus, I'm on top. Unlike some people." She gestured to the screen, now showing a tabloid headline. MC, Blaze broke and broken. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Laughter, gasps, a few boos, and Marcus felt the weight of their eyes, judging, pitying, waiting. But he also felt something else. The old fire, the rhythm of the cipher, the pulse of a battle he'd won 1,000 times. He wasn't just a guest on her show, he was a warrior. And this was his stage too. "You want to talk broke?" he said, his voice rising, commanding. "I'm rich in ways you'll never get. Loyalty, heart, history. What you got, Vanessa, besides a microphone and a mean streak?" The crowd erupted, some cheering, others stunned, and Vanessa's face flushed, her smile a thin line. She opened her mouth to retort, but the stage manager signaled a commercial break, and the lights dimmed, leaving Marcus's words echoing in the charged silence. He sat back, his heart pounding, knowing he'd drawn first blood, but the war was far from over. The studio lights seared Marcus Johnson's skin, each beam a reminder of the spotlight he'd once commanded, now twisted into a weapon to burn him alive. MC. Blaze sat tall, his gold chain a cold weight against his chest. His oversized denim jacket a defiant banner of an era Vanessa Steele was determined to erase. At 52, he was no stranger to battles, but this one, on the glitzy stage of the spotlight, facing a crowd hungry for his downfall, cut deeper than any cipher. His mind drifted, unbidden, to 1990, when he was 21, spitting rhymes at a sold-out Madison Square Garden. 20,000 voices chanting Blaze as Brooklyn Burn thundered through the arena. He'd been a king then, signing $10 million deals, building studios for kids in Bed-Stuy, his music a lifeline for a generation. That Marcus had power, respect, a fire no one could douse. Now, Vanessa, her white blazer a stark contrast to her venomous grin, wielded her microphone like a blade, carving away at his legacy. "Marcus, let's cut the nostalgia," she purred, her blue eyes glinting with malice. "You keep clinging to this legend shtick, but hip-hop left you behind. Those baggy jeans, that chain, you're a walking museum exhibit. Don't you ever think, 'I'm done'?" The crowd's laughter was a tidal wave, crashing over him, but Marcus saw the fault lines. Older faces, black faces, their eyes flickering with unease at her cruelty. Her words weren't just about age, they were a coded attack, painting him as a relic of a black culture she deemed irrelevant. He leaned forward, his voice a low, steady rumble. "You call it a museum. Vanessa, I call it history. My rhymes built the game you're mocking. You don't get to erase that." A few claps broke through, a gray-haired black man in the front row nodding, but Vanessa's laugh was a whip crack, slicing the air. "History? Oh, Marcus, you're a ghost story at best. Let's show everyone what your history looks like." The screen behind them blazed with a 1998 clip. Marcus, 25, in a velvet tracksuit, grinning on a talk show, boasting about his third platinum album. The crowd chuckled at his youthful bravado, but Vanessa pounced, her voice dripping acid. "Look at this wannabe king, strutting like he owned the world. Fast forward, and you're nobody. Marcus, you're selling bootleg CDs at gas stations. Did you think you'd coast on that 90s swagger forever?" The audience roared, but Marcus felt the sting of truth twisted into a lie. He'd lost plenty, his label dropped him in 2006, his savings bled dry by lawsuits. But he'd also given back, funded schools, lifted his community. Vanessa didn't care. She wanted a villain. "You don't know my story, Vanessa," he said, his voice rising, sharp as a blade. "I fell, yeah, but I got up every time. You ever had to rebuild from zero?" The crowd hushed, her smile faltering, but she struck back, her tone vicious. "Rebuild? Spare me, Marcus. You squandered millions on gold chains and strip clubs, then cried when the bank took your toys. You're not a hero, you're a has-been who let his people down." The words landed like a gut punch, her accusation, his failure as a black man, a role model, echoing every doubt he'd ever had. The crowd's laughter splintered, some booing, a black woman in her 60s glaring at Vanessa. Marcus's chest tightened, memories flooding, his mom's pride at his first Grammy, the kids who wrote him letters, saying his music kept them alive. He locked eyes with Vanessa, his voice a controlled inferno. "Let my people down. I carried my people when this industry wanted us silent. You're sitting there, Vanessa, acting like you judge my worth. But you ain't earned that right. What you ever stood for besides yourself." The crowd gasped, then cheered, the tide shifting, and Vanessa's face flushed, her fingers clutching her note cards like a lifeline. "Stood for, I'm on top, Marcus. Unlike you, scraping by in your cousin's basement." She gestured to the screen, now flashing a 2010 headline, "Blaze's Bankruptcy, From Mansions to Misery." The crowd's reaction was chaotic. Laughter, murmurs, a few shouts of "too far." But Marcus didn't flinch. He saw the kids he'd mentored, the fans who still played his tapes. "Bankruptcy ain't the end of me," he said, his voice booming, commanding the room. "It's a scar from a war I'm still fighting. You want to talk misery? Try living in a world that cheers when you fall." The audience erupted, cheers drowning out the jeers, and Vanessa's eyes darted, her control unraveling. "Oh, Marcus, you're pathetic," she snapped, her voice shrill. Your war is over, and you lost. Why don't you apologize to your fans for being a failure? The crowd stilled, her demand hanging heavy, but Marcus leaned back, a slow, defiant smile spreading. Apologize? For surviving? Nah, Vanessa, I'm sorry for you, 'cause you're too shallow to see what real looks like. The crowd roared, some standing, a black elder pumping his fist, and Vanessa's smile cracked, her eyes blazing with fury. She opened her mouth, but Marcus's words had shifted the room, his fire burning brighter, ready to consume her stage. The studio pulsed with a restless energy, the crowd's cheers and jeers from Marcus Johnson's last retort and still echoing as Vanessa Steele regained her composure, her white blazer catching the spotlight like a beacon of her unyielding control. Blaze sat opposite her, his broad frame steady, his gold chain glinting with every measured breath, the weight of his oversized denim jacket anchoring him against the storm of the spotlight. At 52, he'd faced worse than Vanessa's barbs, record labels that bled him dry, tabloids that twisted his truth. But her attacks were different, personal, a calculated assault not just on his career, but on his identity as a black man. The audience, a sea of faces split between glee and unease, watched as Vanessa leaned forward, her smile sharp, her blue eyes gleaming with the thrill of escalation. "Oh, Marcus, you're full of surprises, what?" she said, her voice a velvet glove over a steel fist. "But let's get to the heart of it. You keep preaching about surviving, but who's paying the price for your failures? Your fans? Your family?" The crowd gasped, a low murmur rippling through, and Marcus's jaw tightened, his fingers curling into the chair's leather. Family was sacred, untouchable, and Vanessa knew it. She'd found the nerve to strike. "I mean, let's talk about your kids," she continued, her tone dripping with faux sympathy. "Growing up in the shadow of MC, Blaze, the legend who can't pay his bills. Must be tough, right? Knowing their dad's a cautionary tale for every wannabe rapper out there." The laughter was sharp, cruel, but Marcus caught the shift in the room. Older audience members, especially black men and women, leaned back, their faces hardening, sensing the line she'd crossed. His two daughters, Aisha and Maya, were his world, raised on his grit and his mother's love. Now in college, thriving despite his struggles. Vanessa's words weren't just a jab, they were a violation. A white woman wielding her privilege to shame a black father on live TV. He leaned forward, his voice low, a controlled storm. "You don't get to talk about my girls. Vanessa, you don't know what they've overcome, what I've fought for." The crowd hushed, a few claps breaking the silence. But Vanessa's laugh was a blade, cutting deeper. "Overcome? Oh, please, Marcus. They've overcome you, haven't they? Dragging your name through the mud, bankruptcy, scandals, that tacky gold chain. You're not a father, you're an embarrassment." The crowd's reaction was chaotic, laughter mixed with boos. A black woman in her 60s shouting, "Shame on you!" And Marcus felt his blood boil, his heart pounding like the bass lines of his old tracks. He saw Aisha's face in his mind, her graduation last year, her hug when he'd scraped together tuition money from a gig. Vanessa wasn't just mocking him. She was attacking his community, his people, implying a black man's struggle was a stain on those he loved. "You want to talk embarrassment?" he shot back, his voice rising, sharp enough to slice through the noise. "How about you, Vanessa, sitting there, acting like you're above me, when all you do is tear folks down for ratings? That's your legacy, hurting people who've lived more than you'll ever understand." The crowd erupted, cheers swelling, a gray-haired black man pumping his fist, but Vanessa didn't flinch. She leaned closer, her voice icy, venomous. "Hurt? Marcus, I'm just telling the truth. Your community, those people you claim to lift up, they're better off without you. You're a stereotype, a thug in baggy jeans, dragging everyone down with you." The words landed like a bomb, the crowd gasping, some shouting and protest, others laughing nervously, and Marcus felt the room tilt. The weight of her racism laid bare. She'd gone beyond personal, beyond his career, to attack the soul of his culture, his roots in Bed-Stuy, the barbershops and churches that raised him. His anger surged, a fire he hadn't felt since his cipher days. But he saw the trap, lose control, and she'd win, painting him as the angry black man she wanted. He leaned back, forcing calm, his mind racing. This wasn't just a talk show. It was a setup, a stage to humiliate him for clicks. But Marcus was no rookie. He'd battled MCs, faced down execs, survived betrayals. He could play her game and turn it against her. "You call me a stereotype?" he said, his voice steady, a slow burn. "You're the cliché. Vanessa, another TV vulture, feeding off pain you can't comprehend. Keep talking. You're digging your own grave." The crowd roared, some standing, a black elder nodding fiercely, and Vanessa's smile faltered, her eyes darting to the control booth. She'd overplayed her hand, and Marcus saw it, the crack in her armor, the moment to strike. His mind sharpened, plotting his next move, a confrontation that would expose her, not with rage but with truth, setting the stage for his comeback. "Digging my grave," Vanessa snapped, her voice shrill, her composure cracking. "You're the one buried. Marcus, your music, your community, it's all irrelevant. Why don't you just admit you're done, my mom?" The crowd was electric now, split down the middle, some cheering for Marcus, others egging Vanessa on. But Marcus stayed calm, his eyes locked on hers. "Done? Nah, Vanessa, I'm just getting started. You want to play dirty? I'm ready." His words were a promise, a spark igniting the fire within, and the audience felt it, their cheers swelling as Vanessa fumbled her note cards, her face flushed with fury. Marcus sat back, his heart steady, his plan forming. He'd let her dig deeper, let her think she'd won, then strike when the moment was right, with words sharper than any rhyme he'd ever spit. The studio air crackled with a tension so thick it felt like the prelude to a storm. The crowd's murmurs a low rumble as Marcus Johnson, Git, Blaze, stared down Vanessa Steele on the glittering stage of the spotlight. His gold chain caught the harsh lights, his oversized denim jacket a battle-worn banner, his face a mask of controlled fury at 52, forged in the fires of a life Vanessa could never fathom. Her white blazer gleamed, her smile a brittle facade after Marcus's last retort had shaken her. But she leaned forward, her voice a venomous hiss, desperate to regain control. "You're just getting started. Marcus, please, you're finished, and everyone knows it. Your fans, your family, your whole community you keep dragging into this." She sneered, the word dripping with disdain, her blue eyes daring him to snap. The crowd gasped, some jeering, others shouting in protest, a black elder in the front row shaking his head. But Marcus saw her mistake. She'd gone too far. Her racism laid bare, and he was ready to strike. He stood, his 6'2" frame towering, the chair scraping loudly, and the audience stilled, sensing the shift. "You want to talk my community, Vanessa?" he said, his voice a deep, resonant blade, cutting through the noise. "Let's talk yours. You sit there, hiding behind that blazer, acting like you're the voice of truth, but you're just a bully with a mic, tearing down folks you don't understand. You call me finished? Look in the mirror. You're the one running on empty." The crowd roared, some standing, cheers erupting, and Vanessa's face flushed, her fingers clutching her note cards as she scrambled to respond. "A bully? Marcus, I'm doing my job, showing America the truth about a washed-up rapper who can't let go," she shot back, her voice shrill. But Marcus stepped closer, his presence commanding the stage, his eyes locked on hers. "Your job? Nah, Vanessa. Your job's to sell hate, to make folks like me look small so you can feel big. You want to talk truth? Truth is, You're scared of a black man who won't bow, who's still standing after everything this world threw at him. The audience exploded, cheers drowning out the jeers. A black woman in her 60s clapping fiercely, and Vanessa's smile vanished, her eyes darting to the control booth. But Marcus wasn't done. He turned to the crowd, his voice rising, steady but searing. She calls me a stereotype, says my people are better off without me. But I'm Bed-Stuy. I'm Brooklyn. I'm every kid who fought to be heard. You want to know why I'm still here, Vanessa? 'Cause I'm real, and real don't fade. The crowd was on its feet now, some chanting "Blaze, blaze," and Vanessa's voice cracked as she tried to interrupt. Real? You're a joke. Marcus, your music's dead. Your career's dead. Sit down before you embarrass yourself more. But her words were drowned out. The audience's energy weighed Marcus, and he saw his opening, the moment he'd planned since her first jab. He raised a hand, silencing the crowd, his voice dropping to a rhythmic cadence. The old Cypher King awakening. You want embarrassment, Vanessa? Let's spit some truth. Right here. Right now. The studio fell silent, every eye on him, and Marcus began, his voice a steady beat, words flowing like a river breaking free. Yo, I'm Blaze, the flame that never quits. Built this game with every rhyme I spit. You mock my chain, my jeans, my soul, but I'm the roots. While you're just a hole, you talk my kids, my life, my pain. But you ain't walked a mile in my rain. From Bed-Stuy blocks to the stage I stand. I'm the voice of the people, the heart of the land. You call me done, say my time's past, but my fire's eternal. It's built to last. You're a spark, Vanessa, a flash, then gone. While I'm the sun, keep shining on. The crowd erupted, a tidal wave of cheers, some leaping from their seats, phones out, recording as Marcus's rap surged, each line a hammer blow. You sell division, you thrive on hate, but I'm here to lift, to change the fate. My people rise. We don't break. We bend. This ain't my end. It's where I begin. So take your mic, your stage, your crown, 'cause Blaze is back, and I'm burning it down. The studio shook, the audience screaming, clapping, a black man in his 70s raising a fist, tears in his eyes, as Marcus stood tall, his chest heaving, his eyes blazing. Vanessa tried to speak, her voice a weak stammer. That's cute, Marcus, but this isn't a rap battle. But the crowd booed her, their allegiance shifted, and Marcus turned to her, his smile defiant. Nah, Vanessa, it's a reckoning. You wanted a show? You got one. The control booth signaled frantically, producers scrambling as social media lit up. Hashtags like #Blaze is back trending within minutes. Vanessa's face was ashen, her note cards scattered, her control shattered, and Marcus stood at the stage's center, the king reclaimed, his fire burning brighter than ever, ready to face whatever came next. The studio was a cauldron of sound and fury, the echoes of Marcus Johnson's impromptu rap still reverberating as the crowd stood, their cheers a deafening wave that drowned out the flickering stage lights of the spotlight. MC. Blaze stood at the center of it all, his 6'2" frame unyielding, his gold chain glinting like a beacon, his oversized denim jacket a symbol of the era he'd just reclaimed. At 52, he felt the pulse of his youth, the Cypher King, the Brooklyn warrior, coursing through him, his chest heaving, his eyes alight with a fire that had silenced Vanessa Steele. She sat frozen in her chair, her white blazer no longer a shield, her face pale, her blue eyes wide with a mix of fury and panic as the audience's allegiance shifted irrevocably to Marcus. The control booth was chaos, producers waving frantically, headsets crackling with urgent commands. But the crowd's roar, chanting, "Blaze, Blaze," was unstoppable. A black elder in his 70s raising a fist, a gray-haired woman wiping tears, their pride palpable. Vanessa clutched her scattered note cards, her voice trembling as she tried to reclaim the stage. Okay, okay, folks, let's settle down, she shouted, her usual honeyed tone now shrill, cracking under the weight of her miscalculation. Marcus, that was quite a performance, but this is a talk show, not a rap battle. Let's get back to the interview. The crowd booed, a deep, rolling sound, some shouting, "Let him speak," and Vanessa's smile twitched, her fingers fumbling as she glanced at the teleprompter, which offered no script for this disaster. Marcus didn't sit. He crossed his arms, his voice low, resonant, cutting through the noise. You wanted a show. Vanessa, you got one. Now what? Gonna keep digging that hole? Or you gonna face the truth you've been running from? The audience erupted again, phones raised, capturing every word, and social media was already ablaze. #Blaze. Is back trending on X? Clips of his rap racking up millions of views in minutes, comments flooding with, "He shut her down and Vanessa's done." Vanessa's face flushed, her eyes darting to the control booth, where a producer signaled to cut to commercial. But the crowd's energy was too wild, their cheers pinning her in place. "Truth?" she snapped, her voice rising, desperate to claw back control. "The truth is, you're a has-been, Marcus, and that little rhyme doesn't change a thing. You're still broke, still irrelevant, and your fans are just nostalgic fools." The crowd's boos were thunderous, a black woman in her 60s shouting, "You're the fool!" And Marcus saw the opening, the final crack in her facade. He stepped closer, his voice steady, a controlled inferno. "Irrelevant? Look around, Vanessa. These people, my people, they're the heart of this country, and they're with me. You're the one losing ground, 'cause hate don't win when truth shows up." The audience roared, some leaping to their feet, and Vanessa's hands shook, her note cards falling to the floor as she tried to laugh, the sound hollow, forced. "Hate? I'm just doing my job. Marcus, unlike you, who can't even do yours anymore." But her words were swallowed by the crowd's jeers, and Marcus shook his head, his smile defiant. "Your job's over. Vanessa, you crossed a line, and America's watching." The screens behind them meant to flash her curated clips, glitched. Producers had lost control, and a rogue intern looped Marcus's rap instead, his words booming through the studio. "I'm the sun. Keep shining on." The crowd went wild, chanting along, and Vanessa's face crumpled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears as she realized the tide had turned. The executive producer, a harried man in a headset, stormed the stage, whispering urgently in her ear. But Vanessa pushed him away, her voice a desperate plea. "This is my show. I'm in charge here." But the audience wasn't hers anymore, their phones live streaming the meltdown, X posts exploding with "Vanessa Steele exposed," and MSUC, Blaze just ended her career. Marcus turned to the crowd, raising a hand, and they quieted, hanging on his next move. "I came here to talk music," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "But you made it a war. Vanessa, I'm done playing your game. This stage is mine now." He walked toward the stage's edge, facing the audience, his back to Vanessa, and they stood as one, their applause shaking the rafters. Marcus felt their love, their pride, the weight of his community lifting him higher than any chart-topping hit. He thought of his daughters, Aisha and Maya, watching at home, and his mother, who'd always believed in his fire. This was for them, for Bed-Stuy, for every kid who'd ever been told and they were nothing. Vanessa tried one last jab, her voice barely audible over the crowd. "You'll fade again, Marcus. This changes nothing." But no one listened. Her words dust in the wind, and Marcus didn't turn back. He walked off the stage, his head high, the crowd's cheers following him through the curtains, each step a reclamation of his worth. Backstage, crew members clapped, some whispering "Respect Blaze," and his phone buzzed with texts from old friends. new fans, even a producer offering a deal. Outside, the world was shifting. X was a firestorm. News outlets picking up the story. Rapper MC Blaze humiliates talk show host trending worldwide. Vanessa remained on stage, her producers scrambling to salvage the broadcast. But the damage was done. Her career, built on tearing others down, was crumbling under the weight of Marcus's truth. Marcus stood in the backstage shadows, his heart steady, his fire burning brighter than ever. Knowing this was no longer just a moment, it was the start of his resurrection. The air outside the studio felt lighter, cleaner, as Marcus Johnson stepped into the cool Manhattan night. The distant hum of traffic, a stark contrast to the roaring chaos he'd left behind on the spotlight. Blaze, at 52, stood tall, his gold chain catching the glow of a street lamp, his oversized denim jacket a quiet nod to the legacy he'd just reclaimed. His phone buzzed relentlessly in his pocket, texts from his daughters, Aisha and Maya, saying, "You showed him, Dad." Calls from old collaborators, even a voicemail from a major label exec, the kind who'd ignored him for a decade. But Marcus didn't check them yet. He closed his eyes, breathing deep, feeling the weight of the moment. He'd walked onto that stage a punchline and walked off a king. His fire not just rekindled, but blazing. A beacon for every underdog who'd ever been counted out. Back inside, the studio was a graveyard of Vanessa Steele's career. The show's producers had cut the broadcast early, unable to contain the audience's fervor or the social media storm that erupted. X posts with millions of likes, clips of Marcus's rap trending globally, headlines screaming, "Rapper MC, Blaze exposes talk show host's racism." Vanessa, her white blazer now a symbol of her downfall, had been escorted to her dressing room by security, her face streaked with mascara, her voice hoarse from shouting at producers who couldn't save her. By morning, the news broke. Vanessa Steele was fired from the spotlight, the network issuing a terse statement about unacceptable conduct and a commitment to inclusivity. The announcement came too late to quell the outrage. Activists on X demanded accountability, pointing to years of Vanessa's dog whistle jab at Black and minority guests, her mockery of their struggles masked as tough journalism. The show itself faced a reckoning. Regulators launched an investigation into its content, citing Marcus's episode as evidence of systemic bias, and sponsors pulled funding, their logos vanishing from the network's site by noon. The spotlight was placed on indefinite hiatus, its once gleaming brand now toxic, a cautionary tale of what happens when cruelty masquerades as entertainment. Marcus, meanwhile, was everywhere. His rap, dubbed the Blaze Reckoning by fans, racked up 50 million views in 24 hours, shared by everyone from teens in Brooklyn to retirees in Atlanta. Their comments a chorus of pride. Blaze spoke for us, bitch, and this is what a comeback looks like. Radio stations dusted off his 90s hits. Brooklyn burned climbing streaming charts, while his new album, Resurrection, sold out its limited vinyl run overnight. Offers poured in, guest spots on late-night shows, a documentary pitch from a streaming giant, a mentorship role at a music school in Harlem. But Marcus didn't rush to cash in. He drove to his mother's small apartment in Bed-Stuy, the same one he'd bought her with his first big check in '94, and sat with her, her frail hands holding his, her eyes shining with tears. "You made us proud, baby," she said, and Marcus felt the weight of her words, the love of his community, heavier than any platinum plaque. He thought of his daughters, their futures bright despite the years he'd struggled, and of the kids he'd mentored, some now texting him, saying his stand on the spotlight gave them hope. This wasn't just his victory, it was theirs, a middle finger to a world that tried to bury them. Yet Marcus stayed humble, his reflection tempered by the scars of his journey. He'd lost too much. His savings, his reputation, years of his prime, to believe in fairy tale endings. The industry that embraced him now had spit him out before, and fame was a fickle friend. He spent the next day at a community center, talking to teens about resilience, their eyes wide as they recorded his every word. One kid saying, "You're like a superhero, Blaze." Marcus laughed, shaking his head. "Nah, just a man who kept fighting." That night, he opened his laptop, reading the flood of X posts, some from strangers who'd seen their own struggles in his, veterans, single parents, black elders who'd faced their own Vanessas. One post from a 65-year-old teacher in Chicago stuck with him. "Mem, Blaze reminded me justice ain't dead. Keep burning, brother." Marcus's chest tightened, not with pride but with purpose. He wasn't just a rapper anymore. He was a voice, a spark for those who'd been silenced. The next morning, he met with a producer who'd left a voicemail, not to sign a deal but to listen, to gauge if this was a real chance or another trap. The producer, a black woman in her 40s, smiled and said, "You're not just back, Blaze. You're bigger than ever. What's next?" Marcus leaned back, his mind already turning. He wanted a tour, not in arenas but in community centers, schools, places where his words could reach the kids who needed them. He wanted resurrection to tell his truth, not chase trends. And he wanted to keep speaking, not just for himself but for every soul who'd been told they were done. As he left the meeting, his phone pinged with a news alert. Vanessa had issued a half-hearted apology on X, claiming she was misunderstood. But the comments tore it apart. Her name now a synonym for disgrace. Marcus didn't smile. Justice wasn't about her fall. It was about his rise, his people's strength, the fire that no one could extinguish. He walked into the Brooklyn dusk, his steps steady, his heart full, knowing this was his redemption, not a moment, but a movement. The Brooklyn studio smelled of old vinyl and fresh ambition, a small, gritty space where Marcus Johnson, MC, Blaze, felt more at home than in any glitzy arena. At 52, he stood behind a microphone, his gold chain tucked under a plain black hoodie, his oversized denim jacket swapped for a simple cap. But his presence was as commanding as ever. The mixing board glowed in the dim light, a young producer nodding as Marcus laid down bars for his new album, Redemption Road, each rhyme a piece of his soul, forged in the fire of his stand on the spotlight. It was 2 weeks since he'd turned Vanessa Steele's stage into his own, since his rap had sparked a movement, and the world hadn't stopped talking. X posts still buzzing with #Blaze is back. His 90s hits streaming millions daily, his story a beacon for those who'd been counted out. Marcus wasn't chasing fame this time. He was building a legacy, one that spoke to the kids in Bed-Stuy, the elders in Chicago, the single moms who'd written him letters saying his courage gave them strength, the studio walls, plastered with photos of his '94 Madison Square Garden show, reminded him of the kid he'd been, hungry, fearless. But now his hunger was different, rooted in purpose, not pride. He paused, sipping water, and thought of his daughters, Aisha and Maya, who'd flown in to celebrate, their hugs tighter than any Grammy. His mother's words echoed, "You made us proud, baby." This album wasn't just music, it was a thank you to them, to his community, to every soul who'd stood with him when the world tried to bury him. The producer, a 20-something with dreads and a reverence for Marcus's craft, played back a track, the beat heavy with gospel chords, Marcus's voice weaving tales of struggle and triumph. From the ashes I rise, with the truth in my eyes. They tried to dim my light, but I'm still burning the skies. He nodded, feeling the rhythm, knowing these words would reach the barbershops, the churches, the kids who needed to hear they could rise too. Outside, the world had changed. Vanessa Steele's name was a footnote, her apology on X buried under a flood of memes, her career unsalvageable after sponsors and networks cut ties. The spotlight was canceled, its studio dark, its legacy a warning to an industry that thrived on tearing down black voices. Marcus didn't dwell on her fall. His focus was forward, on the people who'd lifted him. He'd spent days at community centers, not as a star, but as a mentor, teaching teens to write rhymes, their eyes wide as he shared stories of battling labels, betrayal, and doubt. One kid, a 15-year-old with a stutter, handed him a notebook of lyrics, saying, "You made me believe I can do this." Marcus kept that notebook on his desk, a reminder of why he fought. His phone pinged with offers, TV interviews, a Netflix special, a major label deal, but he chose carefully, signing with an indie label that gave him control, ensuring Redemption Road would tell his truth, not theirs. He planned a tour, not for arenas, but for places that mattered: schools, rec centers, small venues where he could see the faces of his fans, feel their stories. The night of his first show arrived, a 2,000-seat theater in Harlem, sold out in hours. The crowd a mix of gray-haired loyalists and young fans drawn by his viral moment. Marcus stood backstage, his heart steady. No nerves, just gratitude. He thought of the ex-post from a 65-year-old teacher. "Blaze reminded me, justice ain't dead." He carried that with him as he stepped into the spotlight. The crowd erupting, signs reading "Burn on, Blaze," and "Brooklyn's King." He wore no chain, no flash, just a black tee and jeans, letting his voice carry the weight. "This ain't just a show," he said, his voice booming. "This is for us, for every time they said we're done, for every time we got back up." The crowd roared, and he launched into Redemption Road, the title track, each bar a testament. "They tried to break my soul, but I'm forged in the flame. From the streets to the stage, I'm still screaming my name." The audience sang along, some crying, others dancing. A black elder in the front row raising a fist, his wife swaying beside him. Marcus felt their love, their strength, the unbreakable bond of a community that had carried him through bankruptcy, betrayal, and Vanessa's venom. He paused mid-set, the stage lights dimming, and spoke from the heart. "I stand here 'cause of you, my family, my fans, my people. You reminded me who I am. This fire, it's ours." The crowd stood, their applause shaking the theater, phones off, living in the moment. He closed with "Brooklyn Burn," his 90s hit reborn, the bass rattling the seats, the crowd chanting every word like a prayer. As the final note faded, Marcus raised a hand, sweat on his brow, his smile wide, not of triumph, but of peace. He wasn't just back, he was whole, a man who'd turned pain into power, doubt into defiance. Back in the studio the next day, he wrote a new verse, inspired by the Harlem night, his pen moving with the urgency of a mission. He'd keep creating, keep speaking, not for fame, but for truth, for the kid with the notebook, the elder with the fist, the world that needed to hear. You're never done if you keep fighting. Marcus stepped outside, the Brooklyn dawn breaking, and looked at the city that raised him, his heart full, his fire eternal, proving with every step that mercy. Blaze was anything but faded. From humiliation to triumph, MC Blaze shut down a racist host, reclaimed his fire, and inspired millions. Thanks for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell for our newest videos. Keep burning with us.